Going on, Cuse Nation? Welcome to yet another edition of Orange Heat. My name's Giovanni as always, and thank you for joining me. Today, a special episode for you as we welcome one of the most fascinating and interesting stories in Syracuse football history. None other than former Syracuse football quarterback out of LaGrange Park, Illinois, number 16, Zack Mahoney. Zack, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. Thank you for coming on the show. So I figure, we'll start all the way at the beginning of your career and we'll work all the way towards where you are now. So without further ado, let's get our first introduction. When did you first really be introduced into the game of football?
From whenever I can remember, right outside this window here, there's a park. So from the moment I could really start running, I was playing with my brother who was older, and kind of we had a good group of kids in the neighborhood who would always, we'd come over and play anything that we could. And, I was fortunate enough where I had some relatives. My uncle played in the CFL for a little bit. So football's been integrated in my life from a very early age.
So growing up, had you ever really watched Syracuse athletics before? Obviously, you're from Illinois. You were born in Chicago, not exactly upstate New York. So had you watched, even if it was Syracuse basketball, or not really?
I was actually pretty big Syracuse fan growing up for a couple of reasons. One, from the football perspective of a Chicago kid and Donovan McNabb, I like trying to stay close, and watching him play was always fun. And my mom was born and raised in Canada, and she actually knew Leo Routens.
Okay.
She played basketball, so anytime Andy was playing, I started watching, and I really just enjoyed the Syracuse atmosphere and the dome and everything. So, from an early age, I did have some ties to Syracuse.
That's awesome. And you're one of the first people that I've had on that played for Syracuse that have actually said that. Most of the guys really didn't know much about Syracuse until their recruiting process began. Now, can you walk me through just briefly your high school career and your recruiting process from there? Obviously, you took a year in junior college. So how did that all play out going from high school to where you were there?
Yeah, my freshman and sophomore year, I was a safety and a wide receiver. Didn't really think about quarterback at all. And then going into my junior year, I was pretty happy about where I was. I thought I was going to be a contributor on either side of the ball. I thought I was going to be a receiver. One of my buddies was playing quarterback. And unfortunately, with going into that season, there were a couple kids that quit, a couple kids that got hurt, and he was the only quarterback on roster. So they transitioned me from receiver over to quarterback going in junior year. I had a really good summer before the season started, and I, throughout would come in every now and then, but I didn't start until the last game of the regular season. Played a half, had a really good half, and ended up starting completely my junior year playoffs. And because I started so late in the process, I got recruited by a couple of places, but it was nowhere near where they seemed to be happy. They kind of just said, yeah, you can come here, but don't expect anything. So that's why I ended up going the junior college route. And so when I finally got to College of DuPage, I just competed from the first day. I redshirted my first year there, and then we had a pretty solid season. It wasn't the best, and I started getting buzz at the beginning of the year from some teams, and everything kind of dropped off. And unfortunately, we were going through a lot of phases with coaches and new playbooks and everything like that, and a lot of coaches weren't doing everything I thought. But fortunately, some of the coaches put me in contact with Tim Lester at the time, who's another Chicagoland guy. And the process of sending him an email on a Monday morning, I think it was, he got back to me by Wednesday and said, we had a conversation, and it ended with me being, signing and sending everything to Syracuse Thursday morning, because by that time, that is the only school that said I can come compete. And I love the way they spoke. And obviously I wanted to play in a Power 5 school. And that was pretty much it.
That's interesting you say that. It's kind of relatable to the Eric Dungy story, really, where, Syracuse was the only school to give him a shot. But, at DuPage, as you mentioned, you throw for 1,943 yards, 18 touchdowns. You're an NJCAA top 20 quarterback. And when you think about NJCAA, there's a lot of schools in that mix, more than there are at the D1 college football level. You're a team captain. So how did that early success and most of all leadership at being the team captain there at DuPage really transition to your years at Syracuse?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences between College of DuPage and Syracuse. My first year at COD, I didn't have a locker room. I used my car as a locker room. I was changing in the parking lot before practice to get ready and everything. So when you go to a spot like that and you want to compete and you want to be at a high level and you're only going to be there for one more year, that means you need to try to get everybody else around you accountable. And I felt I had no problem, telling guys, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. But I also had to prove it to myself and the people around me. So being a leader to me it just came natural. And then when you finally get to Syracuse, I definitely took a step back. I wanted to try to, feel out how everything was going, who the guys were on the team, just, get acclimated with the new situation. And then, after the first season, I gained a little bit of respect from the guys, and I just tried doing everything I could off the field in the off season to try to be a leader for that team.
You mentioned that first season at Syracuse, and it was a special one. And this is really where your story starts to pick up here. You played in 8 games, starting 4 of them just as a sophomore at Syracuse. And this is, of course, at, a redshirt sophomore at this point after sitting out a year at DuPage, then playing at DuPage, now a sophomore in college. And you're being the team's 5th string quarterback. You're a walk-on at this point, and your first start comes against Leonard Fournette and the number 8 ranked LSU Tigers inside the Carrier Dome. Just out of curiosity, I actually went back before this interview and watched some pieces of that game. Dude, you balled out. And the people, Bob Wischusen, I think, was on the call, and they're talking about calming the nerves and everything. Can you walk me through that whole day and that week leading up to that game?
Yeah, I mean, it was you try to play it off as normal as possible, but you're on a primetime game and everyone's always just hitting you up, saying good luck and everything. And it was a very different feeling than where I've ever been. And nerves got to me a little bit, and that's probably why we didn't do well in the first half. And then once we finally narrowed down a game plan in the second half, we really came out and kind of showed what we could do. It's just a shame we couldn't do that in the first half as well.
Walk me through that play, just super fast. Brisley Esteem deep ball. That's when it just started to click, and you guys were in that game from that point on. How did that feel to sling that one deep midway through the third quarter and get that team back in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the play calling it in, and that was probably one of the few plays that I knew if we got into the right position on the field that it was just going to be a touchdown. And going through the cadence, sending Irv in motion and seeing the way the safeties were moving and rocking and rolling, I knew that we were going to have them. So I felt so calm knowing that, before we even snap the ball, that this is going to be a touchdown, because I'm not going to overthrow Briz on this one. And Briz is just going to be able to run by the guy, and that's exactly what he did. And, he made the guy look silly.
Now, how in such a short amount of time, you said you didn't even start playing quarterback till your junior year in high school, have you been able to learn this much about the game of football? You're a smart guy, and we'll get into that, all ACC academics, everything like that, honor roll. But how were you able to learn this much about the game, study the playbooks in such a short amount of time?
The biggest person who's influenced my career was my high school quarterback coach, John Bucher. I was actually texting him earlier today. He played at University of Illinois. He spent a little time in the CFL, but the moment that me and him connected, and from a quarterback perspective, he was teaching me footwork. He was teaching me about coverages. He was teaching me about certain things that frankly, a lot of guys that when I got to Syracuse and even, talked with other players, they just had no clue. And to me, that learning about the defense, learning certain position names, certain, blocking schemes and everything like that, when you understand what all 11 players can do on a field, it makes your job so much easier. And everyone then just comes to you for the help. And I think that was such a big reason why people wanted to, be around, because if they had questions, I usually had the answer for them. And I took it upon myself that, I'm not going to sit here and say I was a good player. We put together a couple of good halves against some really good teams, but the mental side of football is definitely where I was the strongest. And, I took that upon myself to, that's what I needed to do for the team.
Talking about being mentally strong, you made your second career start later on that season against the Clemson Tigers in November. So how did you feel more ready going into that game? Months had passed at this point. It's a difference between September and November. A lot more experience under your belt at the quarterback position. How'd you feel going into that one?
Yeah, I absolutely felt a lot more comfortable. Playing against LSU, there's not many teams in the country that are as fast as them and the style that they play. So now you get to a team that's Clemson, they're very similar. So I was definitely a lot more comfortable with that. And, just even the guys around us, we weren't having the best season, but they just knew that if we can come out and compete, we can always compete. And that's the mindset we had that entire week. And we just tried going out there and, trying to come away with a win.
Now, how was the mentality of the team when things start to fall apart? Scott Schaefer, obviously, his departure, Dino Babers coming in, that time in between when it's a question mark as to who's going to be your coach for the next season. Did you have any doubts? And what was the camaraderie around the team like?
It was one of the more difficult situations. I was very close with that coaching staff. I still talk to them. I try to get out to some games of theirs, and they were the ones that brought me there. But at the end of the day, no matter what anyone wants to say, it's a business, and I think that was the first real lesson that I learned firsthand of how much of college football is business-like. And I wasn't too concerned. When we first got the new coaches, I actually knew a couple of them from when they were at Eastern Illinois. A couple of them recruited me before they had left for Bowling Green. So it was and Coach Lewis made it so easy. He's such a good guy. He's one of the best coaches I ever had. He's so smart, and he made the transition a lot easier. And just being able to then mesh with them easily made the spring ball and everything else with that pretty easy as well.
What was your first encounter with Coach Babers? Did he have any, pep talks for the quarterbacks? And how was he able to get you to buy into his program?
My first encounter with him was not a good one. I was actually watching the last game of the year. I always try to watch every game, and between coaches getting fired and then not coming back, I never had a chance to watch the film of the game. So I was actually watching the Boston College game upstairs with one of our GEAs. I was going through it. I guess he was touring the facilities, and he came in, and I introduced myself and everything like that. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching last year." He said, "Don't, because that doesn't matter anymore." And, all this, and I was kind of in shock because watching film is usually a good thing. But that was kind of my first hint that a lot of things are going to change, and a lot of things did change from a lot of different perspectives. But to buy into a program, the biggest thing is that you just have to – you can't be closed-minded. You have to be open-minded with it. And, when your leaders like Zaire Franklin and other people on the team are enjoying and, being enthusiastic every single day, it helps a lot of other people buy in.
So was it almost more the players than it was the coaches at that point?
It was a mix. The coaches definitely brought a lot of that enthusiasm with them. And me personally working with Coach Lewis a lot, he was a very big help on buying in, because he was always there to talk if you needed to talk. But the way he talked about football and making sure that you understand why we do every single thing that we do, it was an enormous help for me to buy in with him.
How attractive was that no huddle offense to you as a quarterback? Something that you've never done before?
Yeah, I think anytime you get a chance to work with guys who have, they break records every school that they go to. They put up points, and at the end of the day, that's what you want to do as an offense. And, we did that occasionally, but I personally had a lot of fun running out there, especially when you could just get in the moment. Everyone knew what play was going to come next because you just had the same mindset, and, it just makes it so much easier. And when everyone's on the same page, that's when you start putting up those monster numbers.
Can you bring me back to that moment after a Monday practice just before the 2016 season when Coach Babers put you on scholarship? There's a video out there. It just looks like one of the most special moments. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, because like I'd mentioned, with college football being a business, Syracuse is a pretty expensive school. I didn't know if I'd be able to come back if I wasn't on scholarship. I actually spoke to Coach Lewis the previous week, and I had told him, I said, hey, I want to be here. I want to do this. I just really don't know if it's a possibility for my family and I to go through another year here if I'm not on scholarship. And I thought I proved it that I had deserved a scholarship with them, with the new coaching staff. I had a really good spring ball, had a really good summer. I thought to myself, from an offensive perspective, I was one of the leaders. I was one of the guys that you would always go to if you needed something. So I thought I had proved it. And, when he finally gave it to me, it just made everything just a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was one of the most special things, and I'll never forget it.
Every Syracuse fan will always remember that basketball score of a game where, defense seemed to be a non-factor. Of course, it's 2016 at Heinz Field against the Pitt Panthers. You're responsible for 7 touchdowns, breaking Jim Brown's record, the most touchdowns in a game for a Syracuse player. So what was so successful about that game for you in that offense?
We seen that defense so much. That was pretty much the same defense that Scott Schaefer ran all of last year. So we knew exactly kind of what their tendencies were, who we could go after, what plays were going to work. We had a very good feeling and understanding of that Pitt team. And then we just went out and, it was the last game of the year. Everyone kind of just had this mentality of like, we literally have nothing to lose. We lose the game. We're going to lose the game, but we're going to go down swing. And, it was pretty cold out too. So I kept telling the guys, let's just go score quick so we can get back to these heated benches with the blankets and everything. And, it turned out to be like that a couple of times.
Through your senior season, Zach, you didn't exactly put up the wins that everyone had thought, but nonetheless, it was an exciting season. You had the upset over Clemson, which we'll talk about. But what was it like being able to be a leader for the younger guys in the program, guys like Rex Culpepper, Tommy DeVito? What was it like being able to set the foundation for them?
There was a lot of help. It wasn't just me. There's plenty of guys that were leaders on that team. But for me, it meant a lot that, guys after practice would say, hey, can we talk about this certain thing, or can we go watch film and can we go over this? And for me, that was a big, put a smile on my face because obviously, with me being a backup, the majority of the time, you're not on the field and that's where you want to be. But if I can help guys off the field and help them on the field, that made me just feel so much better about what I was doing.
Can you go a little bit deeper on your relationship with the other quarterbacks in that quarterback room? And it changed throughout your time. When you were in your first year at Syracuse, you had guys like Terrell Hunt there who had been there for 3 years prior to that. And of course, Eric Dungy, in a way you guys grew up in the program together. So what was your relationship like in the quarterback room?
Yeah, the first quarterback room that I had with Terrell, Austin Wilson, and Eric, I mean, it was just so easy. Everyone was very easy to get along with. We just had a great time. and we would always travel together and hang out in each other's rooms. And then obviously T got hurt, and it was really unfortunate, and Austin ended up transferring out. So me and Eric were the only ones left. And it was just, it's just different. When everything changes, you got to just be the same person. You can't change with it. And, meeting some of the new guys along the way, Clay, Rex, Tommy, Mo, there's a couple other guys that were in there for a little bit, but, it was never a bad place to be. I feel like the quarterback room is usually always one of the tighter ones, and we just always like to have a lot of fun.
I'm sure you've been asked this question 1,000 times, but what kind of interviewer would I be if I didn't ask it? What was it like seeing the team, reach that finally that pivotal moment, taking down Clemson inside the dome? Being the sideline was a huge part of it. It was full of energy. It got the dome pumped up. It was something so unique I had never seen before, and I've been going to the dome since a little kid. So what was it like being a part of that moment?
It was just incredible. That was probably the most focused team I've ever been around for a week. Everyone just, there was a lot less talking. It was kind of, guys, we've been here before. The year before they kicked our ass, they beat us by 50.
Mm-hmm.
The year before that, it was close. We've always been able to put up, or we should always be able to put up good fights with these good teams that we play. And sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. But when we came out and we held our own, and for it to be a battle, but this was a battle that I don't think a lot of people on the sidelines were ever worried that Clemson was going to come back. And I think that's usually a feeling that some people get when they play the number one ranked team in the country, is that we're up by 3 points, but they have a lot of talent on that side. Maybe they're going to come back, and that just never crossed our mind. And then finally, when everything was done, final whistle blew, and we were able to run onto that field and win. That was very special.
What'd you do after that game? Was there a big party, or did everyone go home and sleep?
No one slept. Absolutely not. No, I went right after the game. I went home. I bought a keg for the guys. And then I went to go just enjoy the moment with my family. We always went out to dinner. But yeah, I bought a keg for the guys. They deserved it. And fortunately the game was on a Friday, so we had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to kind of enjoy it.
Right.
And so we had a really good weekend. It was a fun time.
What was it like seeing the team the next season, even though, you weren't able to be a part of it, you weren't on campus every day, but it almost seemed like you had worked everything up to that point. You were a part of that program that helped build up to that status, and then everything just unfolds. A 10-win season. I mean, you go on the road and you almost take down Clemson 2 years in a row. Even though you're watching from home, what is it like to just see your program have so much success, and what did that mean to you?
It meant a lot. I think anytime that you're tied to something, it always means something at a higher standard than if you're kind of just a fan. I knew everybody who was on the team, even the recruits that were coming in. I probably had met them when they were being recruited. So for me, just to see my boys go out and do that and put themselves on a map, it was such a fun experience. And, I was at the bowl game in Florida. I went to a couple other games, and it was definitely a weird feeling to watch those guys play. But at the same point in time, I wish nothing but the best for them. And I'm hoping we have a season this year and we can go back to a bowl game. We'll obviously see everything about that. But, yeah, anytime you see your friends and everyone around you doing successful things, it makes you happy.
Well, I was going to ask this question at the end, but since you mentioned it, this upcoming season and everything, drop a prediction. What are the Orange doing this season, saying we have a football season?
I honestly have no clue. I don't know what the ACC is going to do, if they're going to do just the conference stuff like some of the other teams. I'm curious just to see. I really hope there is a football. Obviously, there's a lot of things outside that are going to determine that, but
right.
I love football more than some of my friends. So I mean, I miss football so much, even just watching. But, we got to make sure that this country gets back on its feet and is going in the right direction. And I think football could help with that. But, at the end of the day, there's a lot more things to worry about right now.
Have you been enjoying some of the sports coming back? Did you watch that TBT with Boeheim's Army last week?
No, honestly, I haven't been watching too much sports, which is a pretty weird thing to say. I'm trying to get into golf a little bit more, but I haven't been watching that. I've been pretty busy with work and everything like that, so I've been staying busy trying to get a paycheck at this point, really.
I feel
but
that
no,
too.
it's a weird time right now. But yeah, I can't wait for sports to come back.
Zack, I want to talk a little bit about your accolades off the field because, I mean, they speak for themselves. You're one of the most stand-up guys on paper. You've been so involved with the community, so many different community awards. Obviously, ACC Honor Roll, Syracuse Athletic Director Honor Roll, ACC All-Academic Team, President of Syracuse University's chapter of Uplifting Athletes. Like, all of this stuff, can you just talk about how important it is to not just be an athlete and be a good person and a good student?
Yeah, growing up, one of my best friends had a rare disease, and so I had a firsthand knowledge of uplifting athletes, and I had a firsthand experience with my friend who, at one day he's able to run around and play with you guys, and the next day he's wheelchair bound, and it's when you see certain things like that, if you don't give back to the community and you're not willing to do that and you're just selfish. I really just don't want to be around you. The people who, especially when my platform is nowhere near some of the other guys that played there. And for me to try to do an impactful thing was, just go do it. Why not? There's really nothing else. It's like a Sunday morning and you go to a little girl soccer game, Lillian Belfield soccer game. And to you, all you got to do is wake up and drive and go watch some soccer. And the people who just can't even do that, it's honestly sad. But I enjoy giving back just because you get to see the emotions that it brings the other people. And to me, seeing that firsthand is one of the best feelings ever.
That's incredible, Zack. And, it's actually pretty motivating as well. Now, kind of taking another path, something that a lot of people might not know is too much about as far as your career goes. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in Winnipeg with the CFL?
Yeah, that was it was a fun cup of coffee. I was up there for a month. It was unfortunate timing. I actually missed my sister's wedding because of it.
Oh, geez.
So, I mean, that was one of my dreams to always sign a professional contract and play there. And by the time I got there, I mean, they really kind of already had the guys that they wanted. I didn't get reps. Didn't get too many reps at all. I was just trying to learn this new game, basically. And, in a month I was out of there, and that was the last time I put the pads on. But it was a great time, met a lot of great people. I still stay in contact with some of the guys. And obviously they won the Grey Cup the following year. So that was a fun time to watch them. I have a lot of good memories from up there, and excited to see how those guys are doing.
Can you talk a little bit about your affiliation with, I've seen you do a bunch of stuff with them, especially when you were at Syracuse University with Barstool Sports and Barstool Q's.
Yeah, that was just something that we were in the talks with. I enjoy the media stuff. I enjoy Barstool a lot. I think it's a good place to get news but laugh about it. They definitely don't take themselves too seriously. Still in the group chat with everyone who's in there, so it's always fun to excuse me. It's always fun to hear from them and everything. It was a good summer, or it was a good spring to be a part of it. And I enjoyed my time working with them.
Zach, this next question is kind of personal to me. I'm a high school senior this upcoming year, and my goal, my dream is to go to Syracuse University, study at Newhouse as a BDJ major in the fall of 2021. Now, you spent time at Newhouse, both as a graduate student and as a student at SU. So can you just talk about what that community is like and how much you were able to learn there and how it could help you down the road?
Yeah, incredible amounts. The Syracuse community it's one big family. You always hear kind of when you leave college, you never know if you're going to know people, but there's Syracuse bars here in Chicago. There's a Syracuse chapter that you can go meet at in Chicago. So Syracuse has one of the best brands especially for a private school. And it's just such a close-knit place that if you ever need help with anything, there's always tons of people that are willing to reach out. I know when I was going through my transitioning from football to the real world, I reached out to, a handful of people, and they gave me great recommendations of other people to go speak with. And I had a lot of great conversations, and, I made some friendships out of it. So the Syracuse atmosphere community is amazing.
Now, what are you up to now, Zach? You talked about your transition from football to the real world. So what are you up to now?
Right now, I'm a commercial real estate broker here in Chicago. I work for a place called Marcus & Millichap, just doing my best to try to sell apartment buildings right now in the Chicagoland area.
Awesome. Now, a quick little speed round for you before we wrap things up here. Just some fun little things that Syracuse fans always want to hear. So I figured I'd throw them in for you. So, number one, what's your favorite uniform combo for the Orange?
A lot of people don't know this, but the white helmets were the best fitting helmets, and it wasn't close. So if I didn't have on a white helmet, I'd probably go white, orange, white. I think that style, especially because the white cleats and the orange tint, I think that would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, those might be my favorite too. You guys wore those when you played Florida State in the Dome, and you threw that Hail Mary.
Yep.
All right, so the second one, obviously this is going to be a tough one to answer, but it was on Twitter. Best teammate, favorite teammate.
There's way too many to talk about, whether it be from an actual hanging around standpoint or just the person who is always there.
Go hanging around standpoint. Who's your best pal outside off the field?
Yeah, off the field, Austin Wilson and Eric Anthony are my guys. I still Riley Dixon was another one. Those older guys, my first year there, took me under their wing pretty quickly, and some of those guys were, amazing. I ended up rooming with Riley Dixon and Nick Robinson, and those were some of the bigger name guys. And for me to be able to, room with them after the first semester, I think it kind of just showed that, I wanted to try to learn from some of the other guys that were in leadership roles. And it was, and obviously Ziggy, Zaire, Franklin, my captain, he's one of the best humans ever. So those are just a couple of the names I'd say.
Where was the toughest place to play on the road? You played in some of the toughest spots. Syracuse played at LSU. I think it was your senior year. You played down in Tallahassee against Florida State, obviously Death Valley against Clemson. Where was the toughest?
I think the toughest, you have to go with LSU at night. I don't think a lot of the other road games, there was a lot of great tradition. And at Clemson, we played them during the day. There was an afternoon game, but I think when you take into consideration everything that goes into a game day and the time of year it is, and for us to play LSU at the beginning of the year at night on prime time, it was just one of the best atmospheres I've ever been around.
What was your favorite moment in a Syracuse Orange jersey? And you've had some big ones.
Obviously the Clemson one is always nice. From me, a personal playing perspective, would probably be Boston College. My first year there, that was the only time that I won as a starter. So that one meant some special things to me. So anytime that we won was a good feeling.
It was a plus. All right. Now, last question here for you before we wrap it all up. And this is a tough one, but I ask it to every single person I interview. What does Syracuse mean to you?
Everything. More of like a quick little background here. When I was at COD, my first year there, when I was redshirting, we made it to a bowl game, and it was at Syracuse. And I always dreamt of, playing in a Power 5 conference in a Power 5 school. And unfortunately, my grandfather passed away, so I was able to get to Syracuse, but I toured the facilities the one day, but I wasn't able to play on that field. I wasn't able to live out a dream that I had for a while, and I never knew if I'd get back to it. And for me, then a year and a half later, to be on campus there, enrolled, being a student, and being on the football team and being able to play there, faith has a funny way of showing things, and for it to kind of have everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that, and for everything that happened the way it happened, I can't thank the people of Syracuse enough.
That's awesome, Zach. Thank you so much for joining me here today. It was an absolute pleasure to interview you. And like I said, one of the most fascinating careers in Syracuse athletics history. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Of course. For Zack Mahoney, my name's Giovanni Heater, as always, and we are out.